Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today we're getting into a really fascinating story unfolding in India. It's a rapidly growing diagnostics market.
That's right.
We've got this comprehensive research report here, just packed with data on, where things stand, who the main players are, and really importantly, where this whole sector is headed.
Yeah, it's quite detailed.
So our mission today is to cut through all that information, go beyond just the numbers,
Yeah.
and really get a feel for the key trends and forces shaping this market.
Absolutely. And it's a significant market we're talking about. Right now, it's valued at around US $12 billion.
12 billion, wow.
Yeah. And the projections, a 14% compound annual growth rate. I mean, that kind of expansion tells you something big is happening.
Definitely. 14% CAGR is serious momentum.
And this report, it gives us a really good look at the key companies driving a lot of this, like Dr Lal PathLabs, Krsnaa Diagnostics, Metropolis Healthcare, and Vijaya Diagnostics Centre. They're central to the story.
Okay, so a 14% CAGR on a US $12 billion base. That's huge. Where do we even start trying to understand what's fueling all this?
Well, a really critical piece is the government's focus on healthcare. It's been pretty sustained. You've got the National Health Mission, which has seen its central funding increase steadily over the years, sort of providing the big picture framework.
Okay, the NHM.
But if you drill down a bit, the Free Diagnostics Initiative, which they launched back in 2015 under the NHM, that's particularly interesting for this sector.
The Free Diagnostics Initiative.
Right.
What was the main idea behind that one? Why launch it?
It was basically a direct response to needing better access to essential diagnostic tests within, the public health system. And crucially, it was about trying to reduce how much people had to pay out of pocket for diagnostics.
The out-of-pocket costs?
Exactly. If you look at the older data, like from the National Sample Survey Office, about 10% of what people spent on healthcare was just on diagnostics. That's a pretty hefty chunk for a lot of families.
10% is significant. So how does the government actually deliver this? What are the nuts and bolts of the initiative?
It works through, broadly, three main components. First, there's the Essential Pathology Initiative that's focused on making sure a core set of common pathology tests are widely available.
Okay, basic tests.
Yeah. Second, the Teleradiology Initiative. This uses technology, basically, to get radiology expertise out to more places, especially areas that might be underserved otherwise.
Right, remote readings.
Precisely. And third, they focused on getting CT scan services into district hospitals, along with the tech support needed to run them. And what's really telling, when you look at the numbers in the report, is how state spending on these free diagnostics has just shot up since FY18.
So the states really picked it up.
Yeah, it shows a strong push at the state level to make this initiative work on the ground.
Okay, so that's a very direct impact. Are there other government programs or involvements that are also sort of shaping the diagnostics landscape?
Oh, definitely. Several other National Health Mission programs play a role, maybe more indirectly. They increase access to healthcare services overall, right? And when more people access healthcare, the demand for diagnostics naturally goes up.
Like which ones?
Well, things like the National Sickle Cell Anemia Elimination Mission, the National Urban Health Mission, and the National Rural Health Mission from way back in 2005, they all contribute.
And what about that big push for digital health we keep hearing about? How does that fit in?
Good point. The Ayushman Bharat Digital Mission from 2021, that's all about creating a national digital health infrastructure. The idea is to make sharing health records electronically much smoother.
Easier data sharing.
Exactly. Just think about the efficiency gains. If diagnostic results can be, seamlessly accessed by doctors and hospitals anywhere, it could lead to quicker, better informed diagnostic decisions.
Makes sense. And we're also seeing big investments in actual physical infrastructure too, right?
Yeah.
Hospitals, clinics.
Precisely. There's the Pradhan Mantri Ayushman Bharat Health Infrastructure Mission, PMABHIM. It has a really significant financial outlay, about Rs. $642 billion for FY22 to FY26.
Huge amount.
Yeah, and it's specifically aimed at filling the gaps in health infrastructure, which definitely includes boosting diagnostic capabilities across the country.
Okay.
And then you also have Ayushman Bharat PMJAY, the insurance scheme launched in 2018. That gives health cover about Rs. 0.5 million to over 100 million vulnerable families. It makes healthcare, including diagnostics, much more affordable for them.
So all these pieces together, they're creating a stronger overall system.
That's the idea, a more connected, robust healthcare ecosystem, which in turn drives the need for more comprehensive diagnostic services.
Okay, so the government side is clearly a massive demand driver. Now let's shift focus a bit to the market itself. How does it break down? What kinds of tests and technologies are we talking about?
Broadly, you can split it into pathology and radiology. The report mentions pathology made up about 35% of a specific U.S. $2.6 billion segment in 1 year.
Right, and within pathology.
Within pathology, you've got several key areas. There's biochemistry that's analyzing blood, urine, other fluids for chemical markers, electrolytes, that kind of thing.
Okay.
Then immunoassay, which looks at the immune system, antibody tests, allergy tests, hormones. Hematology deals with blood cells and disorders, so your common complete blood count, or CBC, falls under that.
Got it.
And then you have what they call specialized tests. This is a growing area, includes things like molecular pathology, looking at DNA and RNA, or histopathology, examining tissue samples, really important for complex diseases like cancer diagnostics.
And on the other side, radiology, the imaging part.
Right, imaging. That includes technologies like ultrasound, uses sound waves, very common for, say, gallbladder issues or monitoring pregnancies. A typical scan might take, 30 minutes to an hour.
Okay.
Then you have CT scans, computed tomography. These use X-rays to get detailed cross-sectional images, great for injuries, fractures, finding tumors. They're much faster than ultrasound, but they do use ionizing radiation.
Right, the radiation factor.
And then there's MRI magnetic resonance imaging. Uses strong magnets and radio waves. It's excellent for soft tissues, particularly useful for neurological conditions, brain scans, spinal issues. And a key difference here, MRI doesn't use ionizing radiation.
Now, something in the report really caught my eye. It suggests radiology might actually grow faster than pathology. Why would that be?
Yeah, that's an interesting point. The main reason seems to be the significant underpenetration of advanced radiology equipment in India compared to global standards.
It's not enough machines.
Basically, yes. There's an exhibit in the report, Exhibit 32, that shows this really clearly. It compares the number of MRI and CT units per million people in India versus other countries like Japan or the US. India is way behind, so there's just a massive need to build out that capacity.
Okay, so catching up is a big driver.
Definitely. Plus, you have the rising rates of chronic diseases, cancer, heart problems, neurological issues, which often require these kinds of sophisticated imaging tests for diagnosis, staging, and monitoring treatment. Demand is just naturally increasing.
Is anything specific being done to tackle this equipment gap in radiology?
Yes, actually. The government's production-linked incentive scheme, the PLI scheme, it also covers manufacturing of medical devices, including radiology equipment.
Encouraging local production.
Exactly. The report lists several companies, big names like Siemens, Wipro, GE, Philips, but also Indian companies like Allengers and Trivitron who are getting these incentives and have committed investments to make this equipment domestically.
So that could help availability and maybe cost over time.
That's the hope, making them more accessible across the country.
The report also mentions teleradiology being a pretty significant growth engine. How does reading scans remotely help the market grow?
Teleradiology is, well, it's crucial for bridging the expertise gap, especially in rural or remote areas where you might not have a specialist radiologist on site.
Right. Can experts do images anywhere?
Precisely. And it's also very cost effective. The report mentions costs as low as like US dollars per X-ray interpretation via teleradiology.
Wow, that's low.
It is. And the companies like Krsnaa and Vijaya are active in providing these services. It helps them expand their reach, obviously, but also means faster turnaround times for reports, maybe even 247 consultations.
Okay, interesting. Let's switch gears a bit and talk geography. How is the diagnostics market spread out across India? Are there regional hotspots?
Yeah, there are definite regional differences. Currently, North India actually has the largest market share, somewhere around 28–30%.
Why the north?
It's partly population density, but also the very strong, long-established presence of Dr. Lal PathLabs there. That's kind of created an ecosystem, including a high number of labs with NABL accreditation, that's the National Accreditation Board for Testing and Calibration Laboratories, a quality benchmark.
Okay, so north leads. How do the other regions stack up?
South India is a strong second, around 25–27% market share, and that's very similar to the Western region too, also 25–27%.
What makes the south strong?
The South generally has more advanced healthcare infrastructure overall, things like the highest density of hospital beds, more doctors per capita, and also a high number of those NABL-accredited labs. Plus, there's a higher prevalence of non-communicable chronic diseases in the South, which drives diagnostics demand.
And the West is similar purely on share.
Yeah, similar share, also supported by a large population base and significant economic activity. The report actually has some good visuals on this. Exhibit 37 compares population share to diagnostics market share by region, and Exhibit 38 looks at healthcare density. It paints a pretty clear picture.
Right. Now, the business models these companies use seem quite varied. The report talks about B2G, B2C, B2B. Could you break those down for us?
Sure, let's start with B2G, business to government. This model means partnering with government health schemes and initiatives. Often it involves focusing on those untapped markets, like outside the big cities, where penetration might be lower.
Less competition, maybe.
Potentially, yes. And often it can be done with less upfront capital investment compared to setting up purely consumer-facing labs everywhere. Krsnaa Diagnostics is highlighted as a leader here. They've grown really fast using public-private partnerships, or PPPs, under that National Health Mission-Free Diagnostic Scheme we talked about earlier.
PPPs. So that's where the government and a private company work together.
Exactly. They collaborate, pool resources, expertise to deliver public health services. Krsnaa seems to have a knack for winning these government tenders. The report mentions a high success rate.
Okay, so that's B2G, driven by government partnerships.
Hmm.
How do the more traditional B2C and B2B models fit in?
Well, B2C is your classic business to consumer. That's where you or I would just walk into a lab or collection center and pay directly for tests. Straightforward.
Right.
B2B is business to business. So the diagnostics company provides services to other businesses. Think hospitals that outsource their lab work,
Yeah.
smaller clinics, or even other smaller diagnostic labs that don't have the full range of tests.
Okay, so different customer types. Does the report show how the players compare on these models?
Yeah, there are some interesting exhibits. Exhibit 45 looks at test volumes. You can see how Krsnaa, with its B2G focus, really leads in overall volume, especially integrated pathology and radiology. But then Exhibit 46 shows the average realization or revenue per test.
And who leads there?
Metropolis comes out on top there, which suggests they have a richer mix, likely doing more of those complex, higher value specialized tests we mentioned.
Volume versus value proposition?
Kind of, yeah. Exhibit 47 reinforces Krsnaa's volume growth being linked to that B2G strategy, and Exhibit 48 shows Metropolis improving its revenue per test, partly because of that focus on specialized tests.
And overall revenue growth.
Exhibits 53 and 54 break that down. Dr. Lal PathLabs leads in pathology revenue CAGR over a period, while Krsnaa leads strongly in radiology revenue CAGR, driven by that B2G and PPP expansion.
Got it. Okay, this is a good point to maybe zoom in on the individual companies mentioned. Let's talk about what makes each one unique, starting with the biggest, Dr. Lal PathLabs.
Right, Dr. Lal PathLabs. They are India's largest diagnostics company, known for a really extensive network and, importantly, consistent profitability. A key part of their story is just aggressive network expansion. The report says they doubled their labs and grew their patient service centers six-fold in the last decade.
Wow, huge expansion.
Yeah. And strategically, they've been focusing on pushing into Tier 3 and Tier 4 towns. They've also had a lot of success with bundled test packages like their SwasthFit brand.
Preventative health packages.
Exactly. That offering saw a 26% revenue EGR between FY19 and FY24, and it's now making up a good chunk, like 22% of their revenue.
Smart move.
And they're also moving more into specialized diagnostics. They have specific divisions like Geneval for genomics, LCORD for reproductive health, LACE for autoimmune diseases. They're tapping into that growing demand for advanced tests. The genomics market alone is expected to grow at 15% CGR in India.
Where do they make most of their money geographically? Still the North?
Yeah, the North is still their stronghold, but the report notes they're seeing good growth in the East, too. Operationally, they lean towards an asset-light model using franchisees and partners, and they've also made several acquisitions over the years to grow. Exhibit 9 lists some of those.
Okay, that's Dr. Lal. What about Krsnaa Diagnostics? You mentioned their B2G focus.
Exactly. Krsnaa is positioned as the fastest-growing pan-India integrated player, meaning both pathology and radiology, with that heavy focus on public-private partnerships. They're in something like 18 states, over 150 districts.
So the PPP model is really their engine.
It seems to be. It gives them scale and direct access to large patient pools through government facilities, all under that free diagnostic scheme. And as I mentioned, they've been very successful at winning the government tenders, a 75% success rate mentioned in the report.
Impressive. And their test mix.
It's quite weighted towards radiology, about 57% of revenue in FY24. And their radiology revenue has grown incredibly fast, a 26% CAGR from FY19 to FY24, mostly just by adding more centers through these partnerships.
How do they manage the expensive equipment, like MRI and CT?
That's interesting. They've shifted towards a leasing model for those high-cost machines. They partner with companies like Medica Bazaar and United Imaging. It helps improve their return on capital, presumably.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
Any other recent moves?
Yeah, they acquired a stake in a company called Apulki Healthcare. Krsnaa is now their exclusive diagnostics partner, and importantly, this includes peaky CT machinery. PET scans are quite specialized, particularly for cancer, and tend to have a much higher realization or price point.
Okay, strategic move into higher value there. Let's turn to Metropolis Healthcare. What's their story?
Metropolis is a major player, especially strong in the west and south of India. They've been quite strategic about expanding into the north, primarily through acquisitions. Exhibit 6 in the report lists some key ones they've made.
Acquisitions for geographical reach. What about their service mix?
A key differentiator for Metropolis is definitely the growing contribution from specialized tests. The report highlights this, particularly in areas like oncogenomics, cancer genomics. Exhibits 8 and 9 show how this specialized segment is becoming more important to their revenue.
So focusing on the high-end testing.
Seems like it. Their core diagnostics division is projected to show really strong revenue growth and, crucially, a significant improvement in EBITDA margins. Exhibits 13, 14, and 15 detail those projections. The expected margin jump is quite notable.
And their business model.
They also run on a fairly asset-light model, which helps them achieve strong return ratios, like return on capital employed, and they maintain a pretty short working capital cycle, efficient operations.
Right. And finally, Vijaya Diagnostics Centre. What are their key features?
Vijaya is a bit different. They're a very well-established regional player, primarily strong in the south, with over 4 decades of experience, quite a long history.
Deep roots.
Yeah. They offer a very comprehensive range of services, both radiology and pathology. Their expansion strategy is focused on moving beyond their core southern markets, using a hub-and-spoke model, and they seem to be targeting other metro cities.
Hub and spoke, so central labs feeding smaller centers.
Exactly. The report projects solid revenue growth for them, too, around 18% a CAGR expected between FY24 and FY27, driven by market consolidation, maybe smaller players getting acquired and adding these new centers.
Anything else that stands out?
They're noted for having a strong clinical team, good reputation for quality, and interestingly, Exhibit 31 points out they achieve a high realization per patient, which might reflect their comprehensive service offering or regional pricing power.
Okay, great overview of the players. We've covered a lot on the market drivers and the companies. To sort of wrap things up, what does the report say about valuation and the overall future outlook?
Well, it gives a snapshot of the standard valuation metrics PE ratio, EBITDA, ROIC, for each company as of the report date. That's in Exhibit 59, if you want the specifics. It also summarizes the analyst recommendations from the report's authors, buy, neutral, along with target prices and the potential upside they see for each stock.
And the big picture view, what's the overall feeling?
Overwhelmingly positive, really. The outlook for the Indian diagnostics market is very strong. It's being pushed forward by, well, everything we've discussed. Rising healthcare spending in general, continued government support and initiatives, and just growing health awareness among people.
Any specific growth areas highlighted?
Yeah, areas like preventive and wellness diagnostics, those health checkup packages are expected to keep growing strongly, and also that continued trend towards more specialized advanced testing for complex conditions.
Okay, so to sum it all up then, what are the main takeaways from this deep dive?
I think the key thing is that the Indian diagnostics market offers really significant growth opportunities. It's driven by a mix of factors: government action, technology, changing disease patterns, and the main companies we looked at, they each have pretty distinct strategies, different strengths, and they're all finding ways to capitalize on these trends. It's a dynamic space.
It definitely sounds like it. And that brings us to our final thought for you, the listener. As we see this growing focus on personalized medicine, on preventative healthcare, how might these evolving diagnostic services becoming more capable and accessible actually empower us as individuals to take more control over our own health and well-being. Something to think about beyond just the market numbers. Thanks for joining us for this deep dive.